What if everything you rely on could disappear in a single moment? Imagine a world where people are terrified of the dark, so they spend their entire lives buying light, brighter, stronger, more expensive, until one night, all of it goes out. No warning, no time to prepare, and in that total darkness, only one man keeps walking, not because he has more light, but because he never needed it. This is the story of the only man in a valley of 1,000 flames who carried an empty lantern. And when everything went dark, he was the only one who could see. There was a valley where night did not exist. Not because the sun never set, but because no one allowed it to. As soon as the sky began to darken, hundreds of lanterns lit up, one after another, like stars captured and held in human hands. It was called the Valley of 1,000 Flames. Every person carried a lantern, not just a source of light, but a symbol. Some wanted theirs brighter than the others, some bigger, some rarer. The lanterns were crafted from delicate glass, shining metals, and perfumed oils that burned slowly, releasing soft, almost hypnotic fragrances. And yet, the brighter the light became, the stronger the fear grew. Because in that valley, shadow was not just darkness. It was something to avoid, to fight, to erase. So people bought light, more and more light, stronger and stronger, more and more expensive. And while they did, they never realized how dependent they had become on it. They walked with pride, holding their flames high, but their eyes were tired, almost blinded by what they carried. And in the middle of all of this, there was him, Elian. He walked slowly, without hurry, without competing with anyone. In his hand, he held a lantern, but it was not like the others. It was made of pure glass, transparent, with no decorations, no gold, no ornaments, and most of all, it was empty. No oil, no flame, not even a wick, just silence inside clear glass. People watched him as he passed. Some shook their heads, others laughed quietly. "He's mad," they said. "He won't last long," they whispered. Because in a world where everyone feared the dark, Elian was the only one who carried no light. And yet, he did not seem lost. He did not stumble. He did not hesitate. He did not try to imitate anyone. He walked as if he already knew every path, as if darkness had never been an enemy. That evening, as the lanterns lit every corner of the valley, Elian crossed the central square. The lights were so intense that shadows disappeared completely. And yet, something was missing. A quietness, a truth that no flame could offer. Elian stopped for a moment. He looked at the people around him, their hands tightly holding their lanterns, their restless eyes, always alert, always searching. Then he lowered his gaze toward his empty lantern, and he smiled, because while everyone feared the shadow, he had learned to live within it. And in that silence, without light, without noise, without needing anything, he had found something that others had forgotten. Everyone feared the shadow, so they bought light. Elian feared nothing, and because of that, he had become his own guide. In the heart of the valley, light was not just a choice, it was a weight everyone carried without even realizing it. The lanterns grew larger each day, heavier, more demanding, more consuming. It was no longer enough to have a steady flame. It had to be stronger, purer, rarer. Oil became a form of wealth, an obsession. People worked entire days, not to live, but to feed what they held in their hands. And the more they tried to light their path, the more they bent under that invisible burden. You could see men walking slowly, their backs curved, their arms tense, their hands trembling. Not from exhaustion, but from fear. The fear that their flame might go out. Because in that valley, it was not the night that terrified them most. It was the thought of being left without light. Even conversations had changed. No one spoke of dreams anymore, or journeys, or what they truly desired. They spoke about oil. Where did you get it? How long does it last? Does it burn better than mine? Every word revolved around the same thing, and no one seemed to notice how empty it had become. Elian watched all of this in silence. He walked among them like a quiet shadow, without drawing too much attention, but without hiding. His lantern remained empty, always. One day, as he passed along a narrow path, a woman stopped him. Her lantern was enormous, decorated with fine details, and a light so intense it made the eyes water. "Stop." Her voice was tense, almost breaking. "I don't understand," she said, gripping her lantern tightly. "How do you walk like this?" Elian looked at her without hurry. "Like what?" "Like this," she replied, pointing at his empty lantern. "With nothing." For a moment, there was silence. Then she shook her head. "You're a fool," she whispered. "You'll fall, sooner or later." She took a step back, as if she were looking at something fragile, something bound to break. "The darkness will swallow you." Elian did not answer right away. He lowered his gaze, then slowly lifted it again, and he smiled. Not a smile of defiance, but something quieter. "It cannot swallow me," he said softly, "if I already know where to place my feet." The woman stood still. She did not understand, and perhaps she did not want to. She turned and walked away, her trembling light even brighter, even more unstable. Elian continued on his path. Slow, steady, without hesitation. In the twilight, when lights began to dominate everything, he did something no one else did anymore. He listened. The sound of footsteps on the ground, the rhythm of the wind through the trees, the soft movement of leaves, the way the air shifted. Before anything even happened, he memorized every detail, every stone, every root, every curve of the path. not with his eyes, but with something deeper. And while others looked only at their own light, Elian learned to understand the dark, not as an enemy, but as a language. Over time, he began to move with a certainty no lantern could ever provide. He walked through narrow alleys, through hidden paths, without ever slowing down. Not because he was brave, but because he did not need to see everything. It was enough to feel. Meanwhile, in the village, something was changing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, people began buying even more oil, more zapas, more reserves. Their lanterns grew brighter, but also more unstable. The flames trembled despite all the care, and in their eyes, something new appeared. Not just fear, but anxiety. A quiet, constant anxiety that never faded, as if, no matter how much light they had, it was never enough. And while all of this kept growing, Elian kept walking, without light, without weight, without fear, and without realizing it, he was becoming the only one truly preparing for what was coming. The change did not arrive with noise. It came in silence. At first, it was only a shade in the sky, a different color, deeper, almost unnatural. The sunset was no longer gentle. It did not slowly fade into night. It paused, as if something was holding time in place. The animals were the first to notice. Birds stopped singing earlier than usual. Dogs stood still, staring into nothing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. But in the village, no one wanted to see. Or maybe they no longer could. The lanterns kept shining, brighter than ever. And yet, that light no longer brought safety. It brought urgency. A nervous, restless urgency, almost desperate. "Have you seen the sky?" someone asked in the square. "This isn't normal." But the answer came quickly. Buy more oil. There were no solutions, only reactions. People began to run, from one house to another, from one merchant to the next. Supplies were doubled, tripled. Lanterns were filled to their limits. The flames rose, high, unstable, almost violent. The light became so intense that it erased every shadow, and for a moment, it seemed to work. For a moment, fear hid itself. But then, something strange happened. People began to see less. Not because there was darkness, but because the light was too much. It blinded them. Faces became blurred, distances distorted, details disappeared. It was like walking inside a light that did not belong to you. And the more they tried to illuminate everything, the more control they lost. In the central square, the lanterns shone so brightly that no one could look into another's eyes anymore. Each person was trapped inside their own light. Isolated, separated, and in the middle of that confusion, no one noticed how fragile their world had become. Elian, on the other hand, was watching the sky. He stood on a hill, far from the noise, far from the rush. His empty lantern resting at his side, still. He was not trying to understand with his mind. He was listening. The silence of the animals, the weight of the air, that emptiness that always comes before something inevitable. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed slowly, without fear, because inside that change, he did not see a threat. He saw an ending, and every ending carries something within it. Back in the village, the tension kept growing. People checked their lanterns constantly, adding oil, adjusting flames, tightening their grip, as if they were protecting something vital. And maybe they were, to them. But no one asked what would happen if that light ceased to exist. No one, except one. Elian opened his eyes. He looked once more at the valley, glowing as if daylight would never end. Then he lowered his gaze toward his empty lantern, and for the first time, his smile disappeared, not out of fear, but out of awareness, because what was coming would not just extinguish flames, it would test everything people believed they were. And when the light would be gone, nothing would remain to protect them from themselves, only darkness and truth. The night came without warning. It was not a sunset, not a slow transition. It was as if the sky had decided to close all at once. A pressure filled the air, a heavy silence, almost unreal. Then, the wind. But it was not a normal wind. It did not push. It did not howl. It suffocated. Cold, dense, as if it wanted to seep into everything and extinguish it from within. The first lanterns trembled. The flames lowered for no reason. "What's happening?" A voice in the darkness of the square. Then another. And then the first crack. Glass shattered. The light vanished. Another, and another, and another. One by one, like stars fading from the sky, the lanterns began to die. Not from lack of oil, not from neglect. Something was consuming them from the inside. People began to run. "Light it again. Add more oil. It must not go out." But it didn't matter. The more they tried to save them, the faster they disappeared. The flames weakened, flickered, and then nothing. And within moments, the valley of 1,000 flames became dark. A total darkness, dense, alive, a darkness no one there had ever truly known. The screams came immediately, disordered, confused. Someone stumbled, someone else fell over them, hands reaching for something, someone finding nothing. Because without light, they no longer knew where to go. They no longer knew how to move. They had forgotten how to listen to their steps, how to feel the ground, how to trust anything that could not be seen. The panic grew, fast, uncontrollable. And then, in the middle of that chaos, someone stood up. Elian. He did not run. He did not shout. He stood slowly. The darkness around him did not swallow him. It welcomed him. His lantern, still empty, still silent, was the only one that had not shattered. He lifted it, and something happened that no one could explain. It did not ignite. There was no flame, and yet the glass began to glow, not with its own light, but by gathering something, as if it was collecting what had always been there, the faint shimmer of the stars, the quiet breath of the world, the smallest traces of light no one had ever noticed. It did not illuminate everything. It did not blind, but it was enough to see one step, just one. Elian took that step, then another, without hesitation, not because he saw more than the others, but because he already knew where to go. A hand grabbed him, trembling. "I can't see anything," a broken voice whispered. Elian did not stop. He did not explain. He took that hand. "You don't need to see everything," he said softly. "Only the next step." And he began to walk, slowly. Behind him, another hand joined, then another, and another. A human chain in total darkness. People who had always lived in light, now guided by a man with an unlit lantern. He did not lead them toward a new flame. He lit nothing. He guided them home, step by step, teaching them to feel the ground beneath their feet, the rhythm of their breath, the silence that was no longer fear, but space. And for the first time, they were no longer blinded, no longer divided. They were together. When the last door closed and the village returned to silence, the sky slowly opened. Dawn arrived, soft, real, without being forced. The light of the sun touched the valley, and something had changed. Lanterns were everywhere, broken, extinguished, abandoned. But no one rushed to pick them up. No one tried to relight them. People stepped outside, slowly, looking around, as if they were seeing the world for the first time. And on the hill, Elian was sitting, his empty lantern in his hands. The first ray of sunlight reflected in the glass. Quiet. Enough. Do not search outside yourself for what can be extinguished by a single breath of wind. Build within yourself something that depends on nothing, because true light is not what illuminates the world, but what allows you to walk, even when everything turns dark. Most people spend their entire lives chasing light. More success, more approval, more certainty, believing that if they have enough, they will finally feel safe. But what they never realize is this: anything you depend on can be taken away in a moment. And when that moment comes, it doesn't just take your light, it reveals who you really are without it. The truth is, the more you rely on something outside of you, the more fragile you become, because you stop learning how to stand on your own. Elian was never strong because he had something others didn't. He was strong because he didn't need what they did. He trained himself to walk without certainty, to move without seeing everything, to trust even in the dark. And that is why, when everything collapsed, he didn't. So ask yourself, if everything you rely on today suddenly disappeared, would you still know how to move forward? Or would you be lost, like everyone else? Don't build your life on things that can break, fade, or disappear. Build something inside you that no storm can touch. Because real strength is not having more light than others. It's being able to walk even when there is none.